Hello everyone, thank you so much for joining us today for our webinar on how to amp up employee engagement and boost business performance. My name is Nina, I'm one of the marketing coordinators over here at Glassdoor, and I will be your MC for the day. Please feel free to ask any questions at any time into the question pane that you see on your right hand side, and we'll be sure to get to those at the end of the presentation. Okay, I would also like to invite you all to engage with us socially throughout the presentation by using the hashtag GDChat, and you can also find us on Twitter with our Twitter handle, which is GD4Employers. That's GDFOR Employers. Now I'd like to introduce our amazing speaker for the day, Lisa Holden, who is the Employer Communications Manager over here at Glassdoor. So Lisa, I will let you take it away for us.
Thanks, Nina, and hello and welcome to everyone on the line. A little bit of background about me. I am the Employer Communications Manager here at Glassdoor, and I have about a decade worth of experience helping various companies across different industries really manage and showcase their employer brands and consumer-facing brands in front of various audiences. So I'm excited to get started here today talking a bit about why employee engagement matters. So quickly, we'll go through why it matters, strategies you can implement now, some key takeaways, and then I want to leave plenty of time for Q&A. So feel free to write in questions that whole time using the questions pane, and don't be shy because we'll have plenty of time to get to those at the end. So let's dive right in, why employee engagement matters. So this is a timely webinar and a timely topic. Retention and engagement was recently found to be the #2 issue in the minds of business leaders, second only to the challenge of building global leadership. And that's according to Introduction, which is a study by Global Human Capital Trends and Deloitte. And so let's talk about how to identify an engaged employee. Engaged employees are those who work with passion and feel profoundly connected to the work and the company. They're driving innovation and they're moving the organization forward. You have your not engaged employees, which are kind of that middle tier, the people who show up, check their email, do what they're explicitly told to do, and they leave as soon as the clock says they're allowed to. And then you have a pretty dangerous group, the actively disengaged. Those are the people who are unhappy. They're dissatisfied with their work. And this can result in folks actually undermining what their engaged coworkers are able to accomplish and providing that kind of negative sentiment that can do a lot of damage to your employer brand. So when you think about how to define an engaged employee, think about things like emotional commitment, personal investment in business success, connection to the mission. I'm going to talk a lot more about this as we go through the presentation. Opinion of senior leadership. This is something you can actually track on Glassdoor. Passion and pride in the work that they're actually doing, and a sense of ownership. Those are the things that when you think about what defines an engaged employee, those are the things to look for. So let's move to the next slide. When you think about boosting your business performance, companies with employee engagement programs achieve 26% greater year-over-year increase. I mean, that's insane, right? So employees who understand their contribution to the company's mission are more likely to not only bring a positive attitude and commitment to the workplace, but that actually trickles down into business success. And so when you think about that, companies with employee engagement programs achieve 26% greater year-over-year increase in annual company revenue. That is the data point to use to bring to your bosses and say, hey, listen, we have to focus on this because it's actually going to affect our bottom line. And just so everyone on the line knows, these slides will be available after the presentation, as will the recording. So as you're furiously jotting down notes or things to say to your boss, know that you'll have all this available to you. So the other thing I want to talk about here is how much your reputation matters when it comes to employee engagement. So employees rank among the most trusted influences when communicating about a company's engagement strategy. And this is from an Edelman Trust Barometer from January of last year. And I think that's really important to showcase how much your reputation matters here in the eyes and in the voices of your employees. It informs your organization's ability to hire, decisions by investors, shareholders, consumers, and the biggest thing to remember here is that your reputation is very public-facing. Not only are your employees, your prospective talent, and your consumers looking at it, but your competitors are keeping an eye on your reputation as well. And we know from a Deloitte study that 90% of executives understand the importance of employee engagement, but fewer than 50% understand how to address the issue. So that's why we're all here today, right? You want to figure out how to address this issue, how to hit it head on, and make sure that your employee engagement strategy is benefiting your employer brand. So here's another data point that can be really key to helping you manage this conversation and really engaging your leadership in understanding the value and importance of employee engagement programs. So a study that our chief economist did last year was we sought to explore the trends and correlations between company culture and stock performance of public companies. And what we ended up uncovering is that companies that had been designated best places to work by Glassdoor, meaning they have very high employee engagement, high ratings on Glassdoor, actually ended up outperforming the S&P 500 by an average of 122%. And perhaps no surprise, but conversely, the lowest rated companies on Glassdoor underperformed by almost 30%. So what you're seeing here is that employee satisfaction directly maps back to your company's bottom line. So again, when you're having these discussions with your leadership and trying to fight for budget and time and engagement across the organization, point to these stats to say our company could be performing fiscally better if we engaged our workforce, which is a huge proof point to help you get to what you want. So how do you measure and increase employee engagement? Let's get a little bit tactical. We've proven why it works. Now let's talk about how to drive employee engagement and what really works. So the headline here is Simple Ideas, Big Impact. According to Deloitte, the top 5 elements that drive engagement, and again, you'll get this in a recording, so don't furiously write this down, but the top 5 elements that drive engagement are meaningful work, hands-on management, positive work environment, growth opportunities, and trust in leadership. And again, this is from the Deloitte University Press 2014 study. And so what I want to go through are 4 strategies you can implement now that will help you map back to those top 5 elements that drive engagement. The first one is invite feedback. And you can do this in a lot of different ways. So you can launch an anonymous survey or poll with free tools. And what I recommend doing here is you likely have reviews on Glassdoor right now. If you're not an engaged employer on Glassdoor, I encourage you to get that free employer account, go onto Glassdoor, and just see what people are saying about your company now. You'll get a sense of those who have volunteered to share anonymous feedback, think of your company, but I would augment that with perhaps launching an anonymous internal survey, just to gauge and see how your Glassdoor reviews compare with an internal survey. I would also encourage your current workforce to post on Glassdoor to make sure that the feedback you're seeing there isn't just a result of those who felt so passionately that they elected to participate, but that everyone at your organization understands this is a great place to share feedback, and is a place where you can share feedback that will actually be heard and someone will do something with that information. That's a really important part of this, which actually takes me to my next slide, which is about responding to that feedback. So if you encourage people to respond to an internal survey, if you encourage people to post reviews on Glassdoor, it is absolutely necessary for you to respond to that feedback in as public a way as possible. Because what you're saying is, we value your opinion, and then more importantly, we're doing something with it. It essentially shows people that not only does their feedback matter for you getting a sense of how people are doing, but you're going to do something with it. You're going to make changes because you're listening, which is really important for your employer brand, like I mentioned earlier. We know from surveying our users that 62% of Glassdoor users agree their perception of a company improves after seeing an employer respond to a review. And that's huge. I want to make sure everyone understands this data point. We didn't say, look at this review, do you feel better about this company? We said, does your perception improve if you see a company simply respond? So the way this survey question was worded, people simply knew that a company said something. It didn't even matter what they said as much as it mattered the fact that they were listening and the fact that they took the time to respond. So as you're thinking about your communications program around your employer brand, think about that and the impact that a simple response can have to a review. And all you need, by the way, is a free employer account on Glassdoor to respond to reviews. So this isn't a paid service. This is simply a tool that we allow employers to have for easy engagement. And so if your employees are putting forth the effort to engage with you, you should put forth that effort to engage back. And that's why a response is so important. So how we do this at Glassdoor, we have an extremely feedback-rich culture and environment, and that really starts on day one. As soon as new hires get here, we take them through a full day of training, and one of the things that's really crucial in that training is to let them know right up front how much their feedback matters. So during the interview process, we make it a point to encourage them to leave an interview review whether or not they get hired at Glassdoor. But once they're in the door on day one, we encourage them again, if they haven't left an interview review, to go ahead and do so, because we care so much about our interview process, what they have to say, and how what they have to say can actually make us better. Once they're in, we have all-hands meetings quarterly where we get the entire teams together across global teams together, and we talk about concerns, what's working, what isn't working, and we have a very authentic conversation about how we can make things better. Another thing that we do that has great success is we encourage team leaders to encourage reviews on Glassdoor and encourage feedback by department. And that's a really important tip to take with you, especially if you're at a bigger company, because it can feel a little lost in translation to just hear from your HR department every quarter or so. Hey, don't forget to leave a review on Glassdoor. Don't forget to give us feedback. If you're hearing it from your boss, it's a little more impactful. So we really empower our team leaders to encourage their individual departments to constantly share feedback. And then other things you can do, they sound simple, but placing a sign or a sticker around the office just to remind people that your company endorses sharing feedback on Glassdoor is huge for making people feel comfortable with that kind of public platform. Obviously, responding to reviews by department is important for the same reason I mentioned before, but I want to hit on the by department part. So anytime you leave a response to a review, that's a good thing. If the more specific you can get, even better. So let's say there's perhaps someone in your finance department who's left a review. If you can get the CFO to respond to that review with more context than maybe the CEO has, that can be a really valuable boon to your employer brand as well, because it shows that you're listening and you're listening by department. Another thing we do is internal surveys. So here at Glassdoor, we rely on Glassdoor as a platform, but we also ask people how they feel on other platforms to gauge and compare. The more data you have, the better. So we use Waggle for that as well. The next tip is to rally behind mission and goals. And what I mean by this is you really want to have people on the same page about your mission, and that's because your mission really ends up defining your values, your company values, and those values inevitably dictate your culture. So it's really important to keep open lines of communication. What I mean by that is you need to make it clear how employees contribute and provide insight into key business objectives and revisit those goals regularly, and celebrate wins, but be open about areas of concern. We know from that same Deloitte study I mentioned earlier, our introduction with the global human capital trends, only 51% of companies even attempt to develop aligned goals, and among these, only 6% regularly revisit them. And companies that revisit their goals quarterly have threefold greater improvement in performance and retention than those that revisit their goals only yearly. This is really important because revisiting goals is hard to do, right? You set the goal, you hope you're successful, you work your tail off all year, you get there, you don't get there, you kind of deal with it after the work's already been done. But the more frequently you revisit things like this, the more likely you are to have success, threefold greater improvement in performance. And so don't be afraid to make it clear what you want to do here and revisit that goal regularly, because that will result in your highest likelihood of success. So I want to talk about the research behind mission-driven companies. Again, you set that mission, it dictates your values, that dictates your culture. So research has been done by Deloitte that shows mission-driven companies that really get the focus of that, have 30% higher levels of innovation and 40% higher levels of retention. And they tend to be the first or second in their market segment. And so this is really important because it may feel like there's so much going on at your company. How could you possibly boil it down to a single mission? But that is the point. That is the thing that can be the tip of the mountaintop that everyone is working towards. And the other thing I want to say here is that your mission can be a bit of a living and breathing thing. I mean, if you're at a 100-year-old company, it wouldn't be ridiculous for your mission to change throughout the ages. And I think that's reasonable, and there needs to be room for that, because you define this mission, you have a set of senior leaders pushing towards it, and they have their entire workforces also pushing towards it. And all of those people are shifting and changing throughout that process. And so it's not, you should leave room for your mission to shift as your workforce shifts. But it needs to continue to be the thing that everyone at the workforce gets behind. So again, how we do this at Glassdoor is that we live and breathe transparency. And we do that through company all-hands, quarterly business reviews. We embrace transparency throughout our community with community outreach programs and our culture club. And so we here at Glassdoor use transparency as a word as kind of a safe word. I need to be transparent about this. I need to be as clear about this as possible. And this is a word that maps through everything we do and maps back to one of our key values. It's so important not only to our platform and our product and what we stand behind, but what we stand behind internally as well. When we're making a decision on the PR team, for example, we'll say things to each other like, well, what's the most transparent thing to do? How do we uphold our value of transparency? And we use that as a key word that defines our language as we talk to each other internally. All right, tip number 3 is support work-life integration. And this is the whole idea of moving away from the idea of work-life balance to work-life integration. As Josh Burson, principal founder of Burson by Deloitte, says, the balance of power has shifted from employer to employee, forcing business leaders to learn how to build an organization that engages employees as sensitive, passionate, creative contributors. And this is huge, right? Because this means that your employees hold more power than they've ever held before, but that doesn't have to be a bad thing. That can be really powerful and engaging for your own business. So acknowledging this can actually help you engage with employees a little bit better and make it not about punching in at 9 and punching out at 5, but about here's this end goal, here's our mission, here's this mountaintop, let's go get it. If you need to leave at 3 to go pick your dog up from the vet or whatever, that's fine. We're going to get the job done whenever and however we need to. And that's the nature of a culture that leaves room for work-life balance. So within that, I would point to 2 factors that really can help you define a culture that leaves room for work-life balance, and that is flexibility and accountability. And how we do that at Glassdoor is we pay attention to the golden rule, treat others as you'd want to be treated, pure accountability. We trust employees to do the right thing, and we make that clear in our mission and values as well. So this isn't about demanding an arbitrary deadline. It's about giving the employee the headline of what we want and telling them to go get it. We also give plenty of opportunity for remote working options and allow for autonomy. I don't care how you get the job done, but I trust you to get it done. And here at Glassdoor, we do that by really redefining the 9 to 5. We give people those flexible work hours however they need them. We allow them to bring their dogs here because we just love dogs so much. And we also offer health and wellness programs. So we encourage people to go to the yoga class at noon or the boot camp class at 5. We offer peer recognition so that people feel appreciated for the work that they do, and team building offsites to remind people that they're working with people they can trust and who care about them. All right, tip number 4 is invest in your employees' growth. And this is crucial. We've done some economic research on here to really define what we mean here. So the research study that we did looked at all the workplace factors that Glassdoor collects data on: culture and values, work-life balance, compensation and benefits, and we wanted to figure out which of these factors matter most when compared to overall satisfaction at an organization. And we maybe guessed that compensation would be pretty high up there. It's the first thing you think of when you think, oh, employees aren't satisfied, perhaps we give them more money. But as it turns out, the factors that really bubbled up to the top were culture and values, career opportunities, and senior leadership. And that's because those are the things that really come into play in your day-to-day at an organization. And so if you're satisfied with these top factors, you're more likely to be satisfied in an overall sense with the organization, according to Glassdoor data. And so these are really critical factors to take into consideration as you're building out programs and allocating budget to different programs to improve employee engagement. And we know that 1 in 2 employees have left their job to get away from their manager at some point in their career. And this is important because we've all had that really terrible manager that really ruins your life in a lot of ways. I mean, you're there for 8 hours a day, 9 hours a day, and to have a manager that you don't get along with, who hasn't had the right training, can really make your job that much harder to do and can really deplete engagement. And so the ways that we solve this problem, or make sure that it doesn't become a problem for us here at Glassdoor, is we offer management training, and importantly, we offer mandatory EQ training, and that's emotional intelligence training, where we get teams in a room and they really talk about how to communicate. Not only the what, the work that they're doing, but the how they go about it, how they engage with one another, and we make sure that they define clear channels of communication so that they know how to talk to each other when problems arise, which they inevitably will in any work environment. Problems arise. And then we also have a multifaceted approach to development. And what I mean by this is we have lots of touch points and opportunities for people to become more educated as they go through their career path here at Glassdoor. So that's a new hire orientation. We have an educational budget that we set so that people can go out and learn more. We clearly define our growth paths, and of course we do our performance evaluations and EQ trainings. And we also pepper our quarters with a few speaker series. So we'll have motivational leaders come in and tell us different stories or different success stories about how they've been successful in business or in other places that our employees can learn from and really grow and think about how to do their job better based on feedback from these leaders. So to sum up our key takeaways here, the biggest tips I want to remind you of are to consistently invite feedback, both publicly and internally. So ask for feedback on Glassdoor and in internal surveys. Rally behind the mission and goals. And again, what I mean by that is clearly define the mission, set goals, and allow employees the autonomy to go get them. Support work-life integration. Make sure that people have the flexibility to live their lives and do their jobs in the best version of whatever that means for themselves and their schedule. And invest in your employees' growth. If you're constantly looking for ways to make employees better, they appreciate that and they give you more of what they have. And guess what? If you're educating them and you're teaching them new skills, they push those right back into the business. And that's how you end up with a workforce of engaged employees. So, as promised, plenty of time. I'd love to turn it over to Nina, who is gathering your questions.
All right, thank you, Lisa. If you have not yet already put a question in the question pane, please do so now. and we will get started. So the first question that I have for you, Lisa, is how often does Glassdoor respond to its own reviews?
Sure. So we take our reviews really seriously on Glassdoor, and we're constantly monitoring them. We have setups in place to alert us whenever a new Glassdoor review is posted, and we review it and we decide who on the team should respond, and we do that as quickly as possible. So like the example I mentioned earlier with the finance person leaving a review, if someone leaves a review that is about our overall business, or maybe talks a bit more about our trajectory or something kind of broad, that's one for our CEO to respond to. If a review is posted about maybe something having to do with our office, the office is messy, we'll maybe have our head of facilities respond to that. And the response is, we want them to come through as quickly as possible, but we also want them to be as informative as possible. And that's why we engage the leaders of departments in order to do that, because they're in the best position to share the most information and to do something with the information. That's the other thing. I mean, you can respond to it and say something like, thanks, we appreciate this feedback, and we're going to do X, Y, Z with it. But if you don't end up doing X, Y, Z with it, none of it mattered to begin with. So making sure that the person who is responding is also the person who is ultimately going to be held accountable for making sure the change is made.
Perfect. Thank you, Lisa. The next question that I have for you is, how do you handle negative engagement?
Sure. Every company gets it, including Glassdoor, on Glassdoor. Negative engagement is part of it. You're never going to have a group of employees who are 100% satisfied 100% of the time. But the thing to remember here is that feedback really is a gift in any form that it takes, whether it's positive or negative. And the first thing that we make it a rule to do is always thank that person for the feedback. Even if we disagree with it, even if we think it's untrue, we appreciate that someone took the time to say something, and what we do with it is up to us. So we can say something as simple as, thank you for this feedback. We're sorry that you had a bad experience. We're taking this into consideration as we develop future programs, and we wish you well in your future endeavors. That's pretty broad in general and doesn't exactly point back to what we're doing, but if there's nothing we can actually take from that and do anything with, that's kind of the best you can do, right? If you get a piece of feedback that is true, that you see truth in, and you see something you can do something with, it's important for you to take the responsibility to do that. And that can really speak volumes. I mean, think about it. If someone said, this organization stuck me with a manager who didn't have any management training, and I had a really rough 2 years, and I left without feeling like I learned anything from that company. That's a huge red flag to a potential new candidate, but it can be a huge opportunity for the head of employee engagement or the head of HR to respond to and say, this feedback is exactly why we're investing in management training in 2017, and we appreciate you telling us that. We wish you luck in your future endeavors, and we encourage you to share more feedback with us, or something like that. You know, using these reviews as an opportunity to showcase new things that your company is doing and new improvements it's making is actually a huge boon for your employer brand.
Perfect. Thank you, Lisa. The next question I have for you is, how do you handle offshore, onshore, and nearshore staffing? Most of my teams are remote and need to know how to recognize the team members and their efforts.
Sure. I mean, the same way that you do the rest of your job from different places, you should handle engagement. I mean, you're having phone conversations with these people, or Skype calls, or what have you, and those are all opportunities for great engagement. And the nice thing about Glassdoor is it is a platform that not only employees can leave reviews about what it's like to work with you and for your organization, but they can also do things like post office photos. So if I had an offshore set of employees, I would really encourage them to post pictures of what their offices look like, what the view from their desk looks like, for example, as a way to showcase the individuality that is unique to your employer brand, and how your engagement comes through in this central location like Glassdoor.
Thank you, Lisa. The next question I have for you is, you mentioned placing signs and stickers around. What types of stickers and signs are you mentioning?
So feel free to email us at pr@glassdoor.com, and we are happy to give you a little rundown on this. So you can place a sign or a sticker that says, let your voice be heard, and with a little logo for Glassdoor that reminds people to post on Glassdoor, or place stickers and things like that. And if you want more info about that, you can email us and we'll set you up.
Perfect, thank you. The next question I have is, how do you facilitate peer rec or peer-to-peer recognition within Glassdoor?
We do this in a couple different ways. One is we have something called our Smashy Awards, and those are people who crush it. And we host the Smashy Awards. We simply survey our employees, actually, and we ask them to nominate their peers, and we collect those nominations, and we recognize 2 to 3 people per quarter for crushing it, and we call that the Smashy Awards. We also do a lot of peer recognition at those quarterly all-hands and our bi-weekly huddles. So anytime we have the team together and we're giving them updates on the business and we're talking about concerns, we're also using that as an opportunity to showcase employee achievements and things that are really moving the business forward. And we take lots of opportunities to congratulate one another for that.
Perfect, thank you. The next question I have is, how do you quantify the level of engagement you have within your organization?
Quantify the level of engagement we have within our organization. Well, one of the things we do is, we really do use Glassdoor for this. I mean, we're in our Glassdoor Employer Center every day looking at how many people have visited our page, how many new reviews we have, has our rating gone up or down, has our individual ratings gone up or down for workplace factors like culture and things like that. And that's how we measure a lot of our engagement. That's kind of our more quantitative part of it, but we also look at qualitative data, like how many questions are we getting at our internal huddles? Are people paying attention? Are they engaged? Are they just kind of sitting there waiting for the information? And taking a snapshot of what's on our Glassdoor profile, what people are saying, and what's going on just in the hallways gives us a pretty good sense of what's going on. But again, these measurement tools only take you so far. You have to pay attention to Glassdoor, you have to pay attention to what's going on in the hallways and across social media, but the fact of the matter here is that this kind of engagement, this concept of engagement is constantly changing. So keeping your finger on the pulse is really critical to having success here, because you're never going to get a precise picture of it and kind of take that snapshot and let it freeze in time. This is always moving, always changing, and it's important to just constantly keep an ear to the ground.
Perfect. Thank you, Lisa. It looks like the last question I have for you is, could you share the 2016 Edelman Trust Barometer, employee engagement, and other data points?
Sure. So this entire presentation will be available once we wrap, and in that you'll see citations on each of the slides for where these are coming from, and we can link you over to those.
Perfect. And so it looks like that is all the questions. Oh, we just got one more in. So for you, Lisa, peer-to-peer engagement, what's the easiest method to get the team involved?
Peer-to-peer engagement. So for us, we do this by surveying folks and giving them the chance to nominate their peers. But you can also do this by, we tend to see any time you're encouraging people to do something different, it needs to come from the top, and that's important for the message that it's okay. So for example, we see that companies that have their senior leadership encourage people to post on Glassdoor have more success getting people to post on Glassdoor. If you have your senior leaders encouraging people to engage with their peers, you're going to have an easier time with that too. So we facilitate peer-to-peer engagement by making it okay from the top. one of the things we have at Glassdoor is we provide lunch for our employees every day, and we encourage them to sit in the cafe together and have authentic conversations, which is going to happen naturally if you're having a central location for people to gather, eat together, have discussions. Not every company can offer lunch for their employees every day, and I think that's okay, but maybe you can offer a space for people to eat lunch together, a central cafeteria, or maybe just set up a couple tables, and that can encourage kind of more casual peer-to-peer engagement alongside more formal peer-to-peer engagement like surveying employees so that you can have a quarterly award or something like that.
Perfect. The next question that I have for you is, can you talk more about the community door bullet point on the slide that spoke about transparency?
Sure. So Community Door is our internal community outreach program that we have here at Glassdoor, and it's essentially a way for us to give back to our community in meaningful ways. Glassdoor is part of the 1% pledge that was started by Mark Benioff, the CEO of Salesforce, which is essentially a pledge for organizations to give 1% of their equity, 1% of their time, and 1% of their resources to nonprofits. And so as part of that pledge, our time is spent by volunteers in our organization going out to our community and hosting various community outreach programs. Something that we hosted recently here was we got a local school that was a little bit underfunded and was in dire need of extra help. We had the kids from that school come to our headquarters, and we hosted a coding class for them, and we taught them a bit about computer science. Other things we've done is we will once a month forego our catered lunch that we love so dearly here at Glassdoor and use the money that we save and donate back to a school in need. Our community door is constantly looking for other programs and other ways to give back. So that's part of our program that engages our employees in something fun that they can rally and get behind and feel good about doing, and keep us consistent with our pledge to give 1% of our time back to our local community.
Thank you, Lisa. The next question that we have is actually a very, very good one that I think a lot of companies struggle with. So the question is, how do you engage your staff if they're leaving for companies that can offer more pay?
It's a great question, and it comes up all the time, right? We know compensation is a bottom line. We know compensation is important, but for us, we also know that other factors are important here. And like I mentioned on that slide earlier with economic research from our own chief economist, he found that culture, senior leadership, and career opportunities were more closely aligned with overall satisfaction than compensation. So I think if an employee has already gotten another offer and already said, compensation matters more to me, I'm going here, you may have already lost the battle. But if you're investing in those three factors, like I mentioned, culture, leadership, and opportunities, you may capture the employee sentiment and make sure that they're fully engaged and fully satisfied at the organization, so that compensation isn't necessarily a draw that takes them out of it because they're so satisfied working for your company.
Perfect. The next question I have for you is, how do you measure employee engagement in terms of metrics?
Yeah. So Glassdoor can help you measure sentiment, how satisfied people are overall with your company, culture, career opportunities, leadership, and work-life balance. And those metrics help us understand our engagement because we know sentiment around how those people are feeling, and we know how many people are feeling that way. So we really use Glassdoor as a barometer for engagement among folks to see if they're actually taking the time to review us on Glassdoor. That's a powerful tool for us to understand engagement. We also use Waggle, which is an internal surveying tool that allows us to basically have people ask anonymous questions that our CEO can address at huddles and all hands and things like that. But it really depends on your organization. Some companies measure engagement on public-facing social channels like Twitter and LinkedIn, how many people are actually reposting company news or talking about their organizations publicly. So there are a lot of different engagement tools out there, and it really depends on defining what your company really values in terms of engagement. Is it talking about company news publicly? Is it sharing feedback on what your organization is like? Defining what's really important to you and mapping back to the engagement that boosts it.
Perfect. Thank you. The next question, I believe we already touched on, but since it seems to be a hot topic, if you wouldn't mind reiterating, what are some of the best practices for building engagement within a remote team?
Building engagement within a remote team. I think, again, this really comes back to how are you working with these folks already? You're having calls, you're having Skype calls, video conferencing. Those same ways that you're communicating for business functionality should be the same ways that you communicate about peer-to-peer recognition, about engagement, asking people how they're doing in those same platforms that you're using to communicate already can be really powerful for showing the employee that you're not just there to get the work from them, you're there to work with them and make sure that they are fully equipped to do their jobs and also live their lives.
Perfect. The next question I have for you is, can you share with us when employees are recognized? Is there some sort of reward that they're given for the great work that they're doing?
Sure. Here at Glassdoor, we give a prize when people win a Smashy Award, and that can be things like a spa day for two or dinner at a nice restaurant, sometimes a Visa gift card, things like that. But it's important that recognition not just be monetary. There's a lot of value into simply saying thank you for a job well done, and we've done surveys on this to find that employees can really change their perception of their boss and their overall company based on whether or not those two parties thank them for the work that they're doing. So don't think that every time you need to recognize someone, you have to get budget for it. It can be as simple as saying their name in front of the entire company. That can really mean a lot to someone who's working hard.
Perfect. It looks like that is all the questions that we have for the day. So as mentioned, we will be sending out the slide deck, so if you missed anything, don't worry. Just be on the lookout for an email from the Glassdoor team within the next few days. And I wanted to thank you, Lisa, for sharing all of your wonderful insights with us today, and thank you to everybody on the line for joining us. We'll talk to you next time.
Thanks. Take care.